Welcome to this presentation in writing an M-level assignment. It was created to support students on the master's courses within the London Centre for Leadership in Learning, which in turn is part of University College London. If you're studying elsewhere and find this helpful, well then that's a bonus. Most of the big projects that we get involved in require quite a lot of thinking and planning. If you consider buying a car, getting a special outfit for that important event, perhaps finding a flat or selecting a holiday, then we usually spend a great deal of time considering the options, such as reviewing our budget, the best deal that's out there, or indeed how it fits with the rest of our time. Surprisingly and all too frequently, many students plunge into writing their assignment. The Nike strapline of "just do it" really does not do it too well for producing a quality assignment. Writing an assignment shares a great deal with putting together self-assembly furniture. You need space. You need a plan. You need to review or audit your skills. And it's also important that we start with a clear picture in our heads of exactly what we're trying to achieve. Consider building a wardrobe when your mental model is all about a table. So before we start, there's some essential preparation to be done. Firstly, read the assignment brief. This will be in the module handbook. And then having read it, read it again. Have a good look at the marking grid, which will be used to assess your work. It's in the program handbook. And ask yourself seriously, what would good look like? Also look at the exemplars that we provide of high quality work submitted by students in previous cohorts. So Mo Farah is one of the greatest runners of his generation. However, no matter how good he is, running round the track in the opposite direction to other competitors will not secure success. And yes, we do get submissions which have enjoyed a very limited connection with the assignment brief. Consider the word count. For our assignments, it's usually 5,000 plus or minus 10%, with dissertations and reports considerably more. If there's any uncertainty in your mind as to what's required, go and talk to your module leader. You will need to create some space. Most of our students are busy people and juggle work with this challenging course, and in many cases also have demands from partners and families. Don't feel guilty about requiring time to do this work. A much better approach is to negotiate and create some quality time to complete your assignment. You need to take control of your agenda and not let your agenda take control of you. Academic writing is very niche and it has its own idiosyncratic ways of approaching things. It may be that you're feeling a bit anxious because you haven't written an assignment for some time, or maybe even not at all. Well, not to worry, there are lots of resources available. Our own academic writing unit can provide personal tuition, and it also has some great online resources. Another great resource is the Student Writing Guide, which is available at the bookshop at the Institute of Education. It's better to look at these essential skills before starting writing. As you go through the course, we will provide formative feedback to support your development. Do get help if you're uncertain. Feeling desperate is not a great platform when it comes to writing an assignment. It's good to have a plan. Why not construct a timeline that connects the assignment with the rest of your life? Most of our assignments, and indeed the dissertation, are broken down into sections and can be approached in stages. They will certainly have an introduction. They will also have a conclusion. If you've ever read a good detective novel, the loose ends are drawn together. The murderer is caught. It has a feeling of completeness. Please make sure that your assignment ends with that similar feeling. It's important that though we can split the assignments down into different parts, that an overall coherence is maintained. As you write, watch your word count and balance your effort appropriately between the different sections of the assignment. This is a guide to what the word count might look like, but I stress it is a guide. It is not intended to be definitive. Make sure too that you're clear about submission deadlines and also the draft submission deadline so that you can take advantage of feedback from our staff. So let's backtrack to a few of the core skills involved in writing your assignment. You'll need to reference books and articles and journals that you have cited in your assignment. We use the Harvard referencing system, probably the most common system in use. On Moodle is a concise article on how to reference properly using this system. Another tool is to look at how referencing is done in a contemporary education text. This will give you some useful examples as to how it's done. By the way, you record the details of such text that you've used at the end of your assignment or dissertation. This is another heading, and it is references and not a bibliography. Bibliography is the reading list, whereas the reference section lists only the material that you've actually cited. Studying at M level requires you to demonstrate that you've read, understood, summarized, and applied a wide range of appropriate material to your studies. This is usually described as the literature review, and it's germane to everything that you will be writing during the entire program. And a good literature review usually has 3 parts. Firstly, the writer clearly explains how they've selected the text that they've used. Often these will derive from the number of keywords and then explored through what's on offer in databases. The 2 most common are the British Educational Index, the BEI, and the American parallel, the Education Resources Information Center, or ERIC. There's also Google Scholar, but the advantage of the first 2 is that their use is covered under your registration for the MA. You don't have to go far into Google Scholar before you will get a request for payment. By using this search process, you can ensure a greater degree of objectivity. You're not simply collecting quotations and texts to support your own argument. You are expected to present a summary of your selected writer's arguments and conclusions, but please avoid just presenting a catalogue of their ideas. You will also be expected to demonstrate criticality, and many students find this is quite challenging. Maybe some of the difficulty lies in the word itself. It's not just about demonstrating possible flaws in the writer's arguments, but also justifying perhaps why you're in agreement with what they're saying. This is a big area and really does benefit from exploring further. You will see from the marking grid just how important this is considered to be. So to get us started in this area, it's quite helpful to consider what genre of literature you might be considering. In the main, most of the literature on educational leadership will fall into one of 4 categories: policy, practitioner, research, or theory. Policy documents, which are usually generated by central or regional governments, are usually placed in the introduction to the assignment and not in the main body of the literature review. Practitioner-based literature is the product of the writer's experience in a particular area of activity. A great deal of the writing about coaching, for example, is of this genre. Some sounds very plausible, and indeed it may be good, but there are times when you can almost hear Frank Sinatra's classic song My Way playing in the background. It can also be very context specific. One of my least favourite books is entitled Getting the Buggers to Behave. My issue with it, it's very much about one person's limited experience being generalised to a much wider level of advocacy in the development of classroom behaviour. And that's apart from my strong dislike of talking about pupils in such a derogatory manner. Research sounds a whole lot more secure. After all, somebody's gone out there and investigated an issue. There is, of course, good research and there is bad research. A cause célèbre was that of the English psychologist Sir Cyril Burt. He produced research into IQ and provided a significant part of the basis of selective education in the last century. This was done when for pupils at the age of 11. After his death, it's become widely held that he falsified his research, and it's even been suggested that he made up the names of his researchers. Often the key point about research is the extent to which generalizations have been made. For example, a small-scale piece of research conducted in a South London school, utilising interviews with 6 staff, may raise some interesting issues, but it is a step too far to claim that that research explains a particular phenomena in a global context. Much that you will read belongs to the genre of theory. In essence, an academic has synthesized ideas drawn from a wide range of sources. This may be rigorous and generate new perspectives on a subject, or poorly constructed and offer little more than the summary of the thinking of others. Mind you, this one is a good one. A good resource on criticality is the book by Poulsen and Wallace, Learning to Read Critically in Educational Leadership and Management. The third key area of the literature review is bringing all the ideas together as a synthesis or conclusion. Very often when marking assignments, you reach the end of the literature review and feel that you've just dropped off a cliff. In our assignments, there is usually an application of learning from the literature review. A specific context is considered through the lens of the conclusions that have been reached through extensive reading. A poor conclusion will often generate a very poor analysis. The case study itself, well, keep it compact and not global. Keep it personal and draw down from your own professional practice. Successful or unsuccessful doesn't really matter. It's the level of your analysis which raises the game. Before submission, assignments and dissertations should be carefully proofread. They are intended to be of publishable quality. Many typos originate because of an over-reliance on the spell checker, and also make sure yours is set to UK English. If it recommends colour without the U, then it's probably on an American setting. That's just a small point, but then we did invent the language. The work should be your own. We do not advocate the use of professional proofreaders. We certainly don't accept the use of wordsmiths, people who take your raw work and turn it into a finished item. Even worse is where a student has had the assignment written for them by somebody else, in effect a ghostwriter. I don't get plagiarism. One of the highlights of the academic year for me is the graduation ceremony. It's just fabulous to see our students being presented with their awards for the hard work and perseverance that they've displayed, perhaps over several years. If somebody has had their work written by somebody else, it would seem to make this a very hollow experience. You are required to submit your work electronically on our virtual learning environment, Moodle, and it's analysed by a plagiarism checker called Turnitin. This tends to show that the majority of our students have a few minor problems, and these are usually around mistakes over referencing. Make sure you've attributed all the sources that you've used. An interesting one is where you've used material that you've written in a previous assignment. No problem, just don't use too much and reference yourself. Actually, that can feel quite good. In a few cases, Turnitin will reveal that plagiarism has probably taken place, and we will investigate this. If it has taken place, then the consequences are both distressing and serious. If a review of the work upholds the plagiarism is confirmed, then your registration on the course could be cancelled, and this could form part of your academic record. So serious stuff, but fortunately rare. I hope this has been of use. Master's level courses are transformative, but are certainly challenging. During your period of study, it may well be that you encounter some problems. These might come from personal circumstances or even changes in your work situation, such as promotion. However, if you're not likely to meet the deadline for a submission, please contact us before and not after. It goes without saying, we'll do our best to support you and sort things out. Thank you for using this resource, and best wishes in writing excellent assignments.